Hello there, folks. I'm your host, John Terry. I also go by Nerdy John, and today I have a co host.
Gavin Esposito. That's me.
Today we're starting a new podcast. This podcast will mainly be about historical events. And me and him have a fondness for the history of World War One and World War Two. So obviously you need to cover the first one before you can cover the sequel. So we're
Sequel.
yeah, Electric Boogaloo.
Yes.
So we're covering World War One. Let's start off with something interesting that I don't think a lot of people think about. Who was more justified in the beginning?
That is a hard question to answer.
Right, because
The Black Hand, which assassinated Franz Ferdinand, was a Serbian organization, but Ferdinand was heir to the Austrian throne. So you basically had Serbia killing Austria in a way.
But then everyone looks at the size difference between the countries, and they automatically think
But-
that Austria is being the bully.
People forget that it was Serbia's fault. They blame Germany for starting it when it really wasn't
Right,
Germany.
it really
was
wasn't.
entanglement of alliances.
And I'll tell you what, the reason why Germany was blamed for it was because, originally Germany was known as Prussia, and thanks to the acts of Napoleon during the Napoleonic War, he basically got rid of the Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So that left a bunch of weak German
It left the
states.
power vacuum.
Yeah, it left a bunch of weak German states, and so Prussia went in, and through I think both alliances and flat out conquests, they did form the German Empire. So they were technically a late imperial power, and France and especially England were afraid of that.
Correct.
So that's why. I mean, don't get me wrong. Austria, they went from taking up the majority of Central Europe to being a small chunk of land.
Yeah.
Also, I think what's funny too is the U.S. goes to countries that are much smaller than us.
Iraq.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a pretty big gray area. With World War II, it's pretty easy to tell who was a clear villain. Even before knowing all the messed up stuff that they did, Germany was a clear aggressor.
Knock off Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah. So the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, I think, is actually one of the most
Pivotal.
not only pivotal, but it all is by happenstance, because shooting Franz Ferdinand wasn't the original plan. It was
They're going to bomb him instead.
right, because that's technically more discreet, because you're not showing.
Although, it creates a giant explosion, but it's more discreet
Right.
because we really don't know who threw the bomb or who
right,
did it. There's not one assailant.
they should have picked their top tier baseball player. Like,
Oh my god.
come on, I'm sure Serbia's got some good baseball players, especially back
Serbian baseball, that's not something you hear much.
then. No. Yeah, but one of the assailants saw Franz Ferdinand coming back because he actually was visiting. What was it? Was it the public, or was it one of his guards that got injured during the attack?
I think it was one of his guards.
One of his guards
Because he went to the city hall earlier that day
hmm
and then went off to visit
And so he went to visit one of his guards that got injured, and just by happenstance, the assailant was standing in the same alley. Not the same alley, but he was in an alley where he saw him. And
Well,
so
the driver took a wrong turn.
Right, that's right. He took a wrong turn. And so
And then Prince was getting a sandwich, getting a sub or something. He's like, holy crap, there's Franz Ferdinand, and ran out and
right.
took a shot. And
And I think another thing that's funny is Franz Ferdinand he wasn't an idiot. Like, he knew that there was a potential of him being
No, he
assassinated.
definitely knew. He was even advised not to go.
Right,
but-
but like he had a bulletproof uniform
Mhm.
on. What's funny is even his collar was bulletproof. The bullet just barely missed the collar. If the assailant hand was shakier than it actually was, Franz Ferdinand could have actually survived,
Yeah.
which I find funny. Also, what's unique about Franz Ferdinand is, if I'm correct, he actually wanted to improve Serbian relations with.
He wanted to mediate tensions between Austria-Hungary and Serbia.
Right, because for those of you who don't know, Austria-Hungary was a big empire, but the problem was it was
Too big.
too big. It was
Too many ethnic groups wanted
Right,
to do
'cause
their own thing and tear it apart.
right, and it's not even in like the small what we would consider modern Austria. It's not like you got German-speaking people. I believe there are still some Eastern Europeans that live there.
I wouldn't be surprised. Honestly. I mean, there are Germans in the Czech Republic, so
Right.
I mean, I don't see why there wouldn't be any like Czechs or Eastern European people in Austria.
Right, and especially with the Baltic region, because that was a powder cake. Because originally the Ottomans had that territory.
Well, the Balkans is just the Balkans. I mean, they're just.
Am I
Yeah.
am I saying the right territory? Because I get
yes.
I get confused between that region and the region where you see Sweden and
You're getting confused between the Baltics and the Balkans. The
Okay, yeah.
Baltics is like Lithuania, Estonia. The Balkans is
Yeah.
Serbia.
I get that area
Yeah.
confused a lot because of the name being
Yeah.
so similar. And Franz Ferdinand actually married a commoner. Well, I think commoner in quotation. Wasn't she from a wealthy family? Like not like a royal family. Well, wasn't she pretty wealthy?
I believe so. I believe so.
But she didn't have. She had. I think I could be completely wrong on this. She could have been poor as heck.
You know what,
But like I'm guessing like, in order to have some interaction with him, she had to have come from a somewhat prestigious family.
You know what? Let me look that up.
Yeah.
Early life. She was the daughter of Count Boleslav Chotek von Chotek-Ungwuchten, a Bohemian aristocrat. So that's.
Wait, so
really
was
we
she
need
aristocrat? So aristocrat refers to a wealthy individual, not necessarily someone of royalty,
No,
right?
so she was still from a wealthy family.
Right, but because she didn't have.
But she became the lady in waiting to Archduchess Isabella. So I mean, she was wealthy.
Right. But it's simply because she didn't have the royal genes that that was a result of some funny looking people.
Yeah. Just look at that one Habsburg guy from Spain. You ever see him?
Oh yeah, the coroner describes what he finds and stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's
His
freaky.
heart was blackened, and he like, ugh.
And like to bring it into World War One, we had the grandchildren, right? The grandchildren of Queen Victoria fighting each other.
Yeah. It was just one big family brawl.
Right, because the Tsar, the Kaiser, and then the King were all cousins. And
If you look at Prince Edward and the Tsar, they look almost exactly
right,
alike.
and I'm sure if
They could trade places and no one would notice.
right, and I'm sure if Wilhelm I'm sure if they all shaved, you could probably say that they're triplets or something.
Yeah.
Like that's the only difference you could really tell between them is the slight differences in their mustache. And well, I think this is also funny. It's just all spiraled out of control because Serbia being a Eastern European country aligns themselves with the big Russian Empire, and Germany aligns themselves with Austria, but France had a separate alliance with Russia. But what's funny is France also had an alliance with Britain, but Britain initially didn't respond to that. People leave that out. Britain originally didn't respond to France's call to war.
Correct.
They didn't get involved till Belgium was attacked.
Mm-hmm. Poor little Belgium. That was the rallying cry.
Oh yeah. Which, funny, because Belgium and northern France is where the majority of war took place.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find amazing about this war is we had small conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
We had the scramble for Africa. We even, like, as far as European wars go, we had the Franco-Prussian War.
Well, that was way back in 1871.
Right, but you still had generals that were...
Yeah.
You had generals that had served in that war in charge. But as far as, like, really big conflict that involved a bunch of European powers fighting against each other... That didn't really happen.
No, it was
until not since Napoleon. If
World
I'm correct.
War I was an unseen war. There was no parallel to compare it to because it's. I mean, A, you had the technology.
Mm-hmm.
B, you had the alliances. C, you had the leaders. It was just there's nothing like it. There's no precedent to compare it to.
And I think the long gaps between major wars kind of left people naive to a certain extent because like it wasn't just like people were saying, "Oh, we eradicated war," because people were saying that.
Well, people thought World War I was going to be the war to end all wars.
Yeah, too.
And they thought, "Oh, it could never happen again." And then 20 years later, same thing happened. So
right.
I mean,
people, you've seen some of the old posters. People were like, "Oh yeah, you will be back for Christmas."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be over by Christmas, but
right, because they thought, "Oh, we're going to invade," because like from the German perspective, "Oh, we'll invade France real quick. We'll just capture their capital. We'll tell them, hey,
we'll do what we did in the Franco-Prussian War.
Yeah, don't get involved again, but we'll leave you alone, and then they'll help out their Austrian buddies with Russia." And,
correct.
Because like they still have the same idea, don't eliminate the monarchy, just place them in place, slap them on the wrist, and say, "Oh, hey, just don't do that again. You know better who's the real power." And, they probably would have taken some land, but probably not a lot, because Germany back then even was still concerned with the German people. They wanted they took French land, it would have been just a mess because but as the war got on, this was the last war where anyone really definitively fought for a king. I mean,
I disagree because you still have a monarchy over in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, very true. I'm talking like a European monarchy.
European, yes. In general, no.
Because, yes, by this point, England had long forgotten about, absolute monarchy. It was a constitutional monarchy. France's monarchy is actually still around, but I think they're not even like a constitutional monarchy. I think it's like...
No, they're a democracy. No, I think they're a republic like us.
Yeah, I think they're just a full-on republic. But like I think their royalty still technically like a celebrity to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think it's more of a ceremonial thing than an actual body of government.
Right, and that's the way England is too, to a certain extent. But like, let's be honest, if the Queen really wants to, she can influence politics.
She can.
Because like she can, because everyone loves Queen Elizabeth.
She can. She's like a British Betty White.
she's basically British Betty White. Yes.
I mean, she's old. She's a celebrity. I mean, but she can very well.
Because she can say, "Oh yes, I
support.
I very much like that fellow over. I very much like that fellow over there."
Imagine if she supported Trump.
Well, luckily we don't have a monarchy in the U.S.
Well, no, I'm just saying they're like,
And what's funny is like to get a little bit into World War II here, just for a little bit, just for like a little snippet.
Yeah.
People actually still wanted the monarchy. In fact, originally people thought that Hitler was going to step down and let the Kaiser,
Yeah.
who was in the Netherlands, he thought that he was going to let the not the Habsburgs, the Wilhelms take over again. You know, but Hitler, he didn't want to give up. He didn't want to give up that good sweet power. But okay, back to the war. While World War II had a much bigger body count,
Certainly.
I think this one is more brutal.
Well, the thing that people also forget about World War I is they had their own Holocaust, the Armenian genocide.
Right,
But
right.
people don't talk about that.
Right,
because it was done by Muslims,
because we
two
don't-
Christians.
Right. I think other Muslim groups were involved in that too.
There
like
very well might have been. I mean,
right, because like people forget this. Like we're going all over the place here, but people forget this. The only thing Muslims hate more than Christians or gays is other Muslims.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like with it's kind of like with Protestant and Catholics. Back in the 14th century, they couldn't stand each other.
No, not even 14th century, even 1912 in Belfast, Ireland.
Yeah,
But anyways,
I mean, like for a while, people were getting burned in England because they were Catholic, and then the next monarchy, people were getting burned because they were Protestant.
yeah,
It was pretty inconsistent. Like for England anyway, that was a pretty inconsistent time there. That was That was right before Queen Elizabeth took over. Not like this Elizabeth, not this Elizabeth, obviously, but like the
First Elizabeth,
like
Queen Elizabeth I.
Was it Elizabeth I or was it Elizabeth II?
It was the one with the red hair, I think.
The one the movie's based on.
No, is that Queen? I'm getting these.
But
wrong. Anyways,
the Elizabeth that crappy movie is based on.
I'll go with what he's saying. Anyways,
But okay. Anyway, I think, in a way, World War I is more brutal because you had technology that people had no clue how to use, and they were still using old line battle tactics.
well, the thing is, if you ever seen pictures of Civil War uniforms, they wear the Union Army wears blue colored suits,
Right.
while the French Army wore kind of the same color scheme.
Right.
And while the Germans were all camouflaged, you'd see the Frenchmen coming over in blue uniforms. They're visible for miles. You could see them.
Right.
They just picked them off. And you had machine guns, Maximum guns, Vickers guns, Gatling guns.
I mean, they were using machine guns in the African Scramble.
Yeah.
But as far as like Europeans using them on themselves, like they didn't realize how devastating they would be. They thought it was just devastating because these people are just using sticks to fight us. That's why.
Well, I mean, I'm talking more like the Somme and stuff, where you had like waves of soldiers coming at you, and they would just get mowed down.
Only to gain not even a foot of land.
Yeah.
Which is.
And then plus you had U-boats, knock knock Lusitania calling, airplanes, Zeppelins even, which all really didn't last long, but still.
And originally.
Tanks too. That was
The British were the first. The British were the first ones to introduce the tank, and actually they weren't that effective at first.
No, they weren't.
They could shrug off shrapnel here and there, but the problem was the battlefields were so muddy that half of them
they'd sink.
Half of them got stuck in place.
They were just basically glorified tractors.
Right, and the first year of the war, I think people even after, I think people still had some hope left because that 1914 is when, on the day of Christmas, all the soldiers, for one moment in time, treated each other like men.
Yes.
They, told each other about their families, and to a certain extent, they made friendships.
They saw them each other as humans and not.
Right. I think
not humans.
Right. Rather than just the enemy.
Yeah.
Because they were all, if you think, they were all fighting for the same reason. Their king or government just got involved in the war, and because of duty to one's country
Mhm.
and king. They had to bomb the but that was the only time they
Mhm.
ever did that.
Mhm.
I think that's because by the time the Second Year War went around, they were just like, what's the
Well, the thing
point?
is, the officers prohibited.
Right, that too. I think there was still some like camaraderie to a certain extent
Yeah.
because like they would actually tell each other, "Hey, our officers are
Mhm.
planning out to dig in to
Mhm.
bomb your guys' trench. I'm
Mhm.
just going to warn you now, so that way you guys can get as many men as you
Well,
can out of there."
in the movie "They Shall Not Grow," you see a scene where there's British soldiers treating a German soldier for injuries, and they're just getting along like normal people. They're just talking, one pats him on the back, and
Right, there was no outward hatred for
I,
anyone.
I don't think they actually hated one another,
Hmm.
like how, for lack of better terms, how the Americans hated the Nazis, or how the Nazis hated the Soviets, or how the Nazis hated the Jews. I
Right.
think it's always the Nazis,
Well, it's
but
like
I think that in World War One, they didn't feel a personal sense of hatred as they did in World War Two.
right, because at the end of the day, this was really a war about one's
Mhm.
duty to one's
Yeah.
country.
It
And
wasn't ideological in the sense of
at the
like,
time, I mean, don't get me wrong, you still had nationalism.
no, yeah, certainly.
But nationalism wasn't as bad as it will be in the future. Definitely, America's view on the war, well, I think made a lot of sense at the beginning because it was purely a European
Mhm.
conflict made out of European ideals. There was no reason to get involved in it.
No use in us to get involved in something 2,000 miles away.
Right, and it wasn't like American interests
No.
were being threatened at the time. We didn't. I don't think we even traded with Austria-Hungary. I mean they. I mean I'm going to assume that they probably Austria-Hungary probably had a trading agreement with France or Britain somewhere.
We might have like traded like wheat with Austria-Hungary. I'm not sure.
To a certain
But
extent, we might have, yeah. But it's like it's not like they were major trading partners with
no,
us.
it's
What
it's
I'm
not
getting
like
at.
they were like.
And it's not like Britain didn't stop trading with us because
Mhm.
that was definitely our major trading partner. It's not like they stopped.
Mhm.
The war was far away from their homeland, so. And um, I can. I'm going. I don't know if you're going to disagree or not when I say this, but I can see why Wilhelm made the order to say, okay, we're going to sink any ship. I can definitely see why he made that desperate attempt because he's fighting a war on two fronts.
Mhm.
Both his enemies are still being well traded in. He's in the center of Europe, and there's not really a lot of land. There's not really a lot he can do about it because originally, Italy was part of the Central Powers.
Yes.
But then, because they wanted some of Austria's good old land, they switched sides.
And then
And they didn't. They
yeah,
I don't think
did
they
the
were.
switcheroo.
Yeah, I don't think they were officially in the war. Not for a good chunk of it anyway. But they definitely weren't trading with Germany. So Germany doesn't really have any supplies coming in.
Mhm.
And it's Britain's battleships Britain still had the top navy at the time, and
Yes.
they would continue that until after World War II. So they still had a couple years left being
Mhm.
the kings of the sea.
Yes.
And I mean, I definitely don't agree with it because a lot of civilians, not just American citizens, but citizens in general, died from it. I can see why he made it though. Definitely.
I mean, he probably also viewed other ships as a threat, so that's
Right,
why.
because it's like, well, you're It's very simple logic. You're supplying the enemy. My enemy is trying to kill me. Therefore, if I get rid of you, my enemy won't be supplied no more.
Mhm.
And also, the Zimmerman telegram. Am I pronouncing
Zimmerman.
Zimmerman telegram. I think it is an interesting one, because I believe that even if it wasn't interfered with. I don't think Mexico had the confidence to go to war with us.
No, they wouldn't have.
Because even during World War One, nobody really wanted the U.S. fighting against them because, well, we didn't even have very big military. But it was the fact that we had a lot of technological advances.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had the industrial power to, if we wanted to, outproduce all of, well, not all of Europe, but like a good chunk of Europe. Yeah. But as far as Mexico goes, I don't think Mexico would have agreed to the telegram.
No, they wouldn't have.
Right, it would be too much of a risk. Because,
I mean, did Mexican even really have an army?
No, they did.
And they were still,
I think they did.
They were still dealing with Pancho de Villa and their own uprising and
right, because they had a bunch of internal stuff going
Mm-hmm.
on. So I don't really think they would have agreed to the telegram. I think actually that they would. I don't think they would have even said anything.
No, I think they would just left them on red.
Well, they would
opened it and shoved it aside. So.
Right. So ultimately, I think. Well, I think the U.S. probably would have still gone into the war because of the sinking ships, but that was like one of the main causes of it was that telegram. So I think it probably would have been much later on.
Mm-hmm.
Into it, and it's how can I articulate this? It's interesting to see the German perspective on the war,
Mm-hmm.
because it was because obviously like they're the loser, they lost during
Yes.
the war, so it's like it's interesting to see like some soldiers still thought that they could like fight it out.
Mm-hmm.
Some ultimately knew they were going to be defeated. If you can't tell, this is our first podcast, so we're sorry for some of the dead air.
Yeah, just awkward silence.
We'll get better at it as time goes on.
We need like some background music or something, just like.
Oh yeah, definitely. We need to make some like intro music. Good.
But the Germans still thought they could do it,
Right.
win.
And it's because people blamed that like the Weimar Republic, was it that like
Weimar.
the Weimar Republic.
Weimar.
The
Weimar.
Weimar.
W is pronounced as a V in German.
Yeah, the Weimar Republic.
Weimar Republic.
Everyone blamed the Weimar Republic.
Mhm.
It actuality was kind of Kaiser's fault. Kinda.
Yeah, I honestly, it was honestly Serbia's fault in my opinion. It was totally their fault.
Right. Well, it's like, okay, after the assassination, Austria purposely gave them a list of demands that they couldn't agree to.
It was like a laundry list of do this, do that. They didn't have enough money.
Right, they didn't have enough money. They couldn't.
And
like,
then
I think
they started printing more money.
I know. I think it was. It was like Austria told Serbia, "Hey, basically, you're going to be our puppet."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
Was Romania? Well, I figured, was Romania independent or was it part of?
Romania was.
Because I think Bulgaria was independent.
Bulgaria was in the Central Powers.
Oh, okay.
So Romania, I'm not sure, but
Greece was dealing with its own crap.
Greece was just being Greece.
Yeah.
But regarding the Weimar Republic, they were in debt, so they started printing money, went into more debt, and then you get Funny Mustache Man in 1933. Well,
Right.
1923, because he had a whole beer hall
Right.
riot thing and got
Right.
detained by the police.
Ain't that funny? Ain't that funny that they allowed the guy who literally a couple years ago was trying to like actually take over their country. They put him in office.
Yeah.
I think that's funny. You know.
Well, I
people-
mean, desperate times called for desperate measures,
Right.
and they really didn't know he would turn out to be a colossal jerk.
although I do agree with those who give up freedom for a little security
They deserve neither.
deserve neither, right? And communism was I would say all thanks to
Oh,
this
we
war.
went from here to here in just completely
Well, it's
jumped, but
well, yeah, we're gonna be jumping around topics, but it still relates to World
Yeah.
War One because
that was the first real appearance you saw of materialized communist society.
right, because
Materialized communist society.
Marx. What was his full name? The German Marx.
Karl Marx.
Karl
Marx and
Karl-
Friedrich Engels.
Karl Marx's ideals were definitely were printed out. They were book. Everyone knew them to a certain degree. Whether they were they demonized? Were they demonized before even the Soviet Union? Because I know, like, obviously not. Like, no one was like, "Oh yeah, we should totally switch our government to this."
Honestly,
but like,
I don't think there's much thought to communism before 1917 when the
Right.
It was just kind of like, and it's kind of, there might have been some people in Germany who
Right.
practice it, but
with that being a German
yeah,
ideal,
it was not on a large scale like it was in Russia.
yeah. But Lenin was hiding out in Sweden. Because,
No,
not
Switzerland.
Switzerland. Sorry, I get those two mixed up
Same
sometimes.
thing.
Switzerland.
One has the gold, the other has Swedish people.
He was hiding out in there, and the Germans were like, "Hey, we'll give you free passage.
Mm-hmm.
All we need to do is, cause some trouble."
Yeah.
That's basically what they were like, and the revolution started, which caused
Kind of a mess.
Russia withdrawal from the war,
Mm-hmm.
which I might be viewed as a bad guy for this, but it might have been the best for Russia because Russia, they didn't even have, they weren't even modernized by those standards.
No, they weren't. And if it weren't
I don't even think like a majority, like I don't even think like 25% of their men had guns.
I'm not saying communism is good, because as a conservative American, I hate communism. But if it weren't for communism, Russia wouldn't have become a modern nation. They wouldn't have got steel mills. They wouldn't have got railroad. I mean, they had railroads,
And,
but
22
large scale industry.
I mean, 22 million people died to achieve that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, in terms of long-term effects, it was good for the long run.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, outside of like St. Petersburg and Moscow and major cities, Russia was still pretty much a pioneer nation. Like,
Right. They were, I would say, they were still living under 18th century ideals.
instead of having Western expansion like we had, they had Eastern expansion, but it was still a big, vast prairie land.
I mean, to give you an idea of how messed up they were, they lost to Japan in 1905, who just recently got their go a little bit of a tangent here. First off, it's impressive. Don't get me wrong. That Japan, in a short amount of time, what was it, like 40, 60 years? They were able to.
1848 is when Matthew Perry, who was the brother of Commodore Oliver Perry, fought the Battle of Lake Erie.
Right. They were just like.
Anyways, he came over and gave Japan an alternative. Yeah. You trade with us or else, and they opened up and traded. Anyways,
right. But it's impressive in that short span of time that they were able to understand all of the modern European technology and use it to a great effect. Because the conflict between them and Russia was about who would get control over Korea, if I'm correct.
Let me Google that. I don't know.
I know it's about that, like the Manchurian Korean region, like around there. That's where their main conflict was.
No, that's not my one.
Because they fought China for a little bit, and then the European powers are just kind of like, "Hey, stop! That's what we do."
Yes, it was over Manchuria and Korea.
Right, and so after the little spit with China, they went after Russia, and Russia lost. Like that's how bad it was. They lost to a country who just recently got all their guns.
I mean, it was only some figure in 1905 to 1848. It was only 57 years it had modern technology. It still managed to lose to Russia.
Well, I mean, no, they won against Russia.
Won, my bad.
Yeah.
Brain fart.
Yeah, and so if you want to talk about like the tragedy of men dying for to only get a couple inches of land, that was especially true during the Eastern
Yes.
Front.
Yes.
Especially true. You had hundreds of thousands of men dying. And the sick and twisted part was everyone, like England wanted them in the war for that sake, because it's like, hey, at least they're not shooting our
Yeah.
guys. Because England and France knew that if this was a one front war, they would have lost. Ultimately, in hindsight, Lenin's revolution was technically somewhat of a good thing.
Not in the long term.
Not, I mean, like for the sake of World War II, yes. And
Holy cow, we've almost been doing this thing for an hour.
right. That's podcasting, my friend. And what was I gonna say? I think, if I'm correct, a lot of the guys from the Russian military went to Lenin because think about it. When before this war, you read about kings on the front lines with their soldiers, taking the glory of the battle, sticking with them.
Yeah.
You know what the Tsar did?
He sat back and watched.
Oh no!
chaos.
And on occasion he would prance around, and be like, "Don't
Yeah.
worry, soldiers. You
Yeah.
are fighting for the good, for the greater good." So yeah, I can definitely see. And plus, they didn't really have there wasn't even there was barely a council to say, "Hey,
Yeah.
Tsar, maybe you shouldn't do that." Even when he put council in quotations, they were his puppets. And I'm not trying to say the Tsar was necessarily a bad guy. He could have been good. He could have been a good man.
Yeah.
It's just things were not handled correctly, and some bad stuff happened as a result.
Ready to sign off?
Let's
I'm getting kind of bored with this.
am I
No
boring
offense.
to you? Am I boring to you?
No. You want to take this outside?
I'll take this outside.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll have a world war of our own.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway. We're going to be better as this goes on. We're going to be better.
Obviously.
Better be prepared for this. We kind of just went at it flying by the seat of our pants because we both love history a lot and studying it. And don't worry, we're not just going to be talking about modern stuff. We're going to be talking about ancient Roman, medieval stuff.
Black Plague, fun stuff.
Oh yeah, the bubonic plague. Yeah, that's gonna be fun. Another thing. I guess we should talk about the setup so that way for when we do our sequel episode. The end of the war treaty.
Treaty of Versailles.
Yeah, the Treaty of Versailles was signed in a train cart.
Yeah, a railroad car, and the same railroad car was used to declare war on France by Germany.
We want to say some of the juicy bits. And Germany, they got the hard rear end of it all because they took England made sure that the Kaiser wasn't in power no more. The Kaiser was sent. Well, he went on his own. He went on by his own volition to the Dutch because they were neutral during the war. And the Habsburgs, didn't they still have power over Hungary?
I'm not entirely sure on that.
Because I know because the whole reason why they were called the Austrian-Hungary Empire was because they had a good majority of the Hungarian royal family in there. But anyway, Austria was reduced to size. I think by the time the treaty happened, I think the White Revolution was going on. and it kind of showed the U.S. as an economical powerhouse, because I think we got a bit of an economy boost
Yes.
in that, didn't we?
Yes.
To a certain extent, Britain too, because I don't really think it wasn't like World War II where their homeland was really damaged that much. France, boy, the northern side of it got some hard hit stuff, man.
They got creamed.
Right. Yeah. And it left Germany severely weak. Poland was formed out of this because...
And then, got annexed again, but we won't go into
Right,
that.
because they were like, okay. I think what they did was, okay, all you ethnic people, you can decide what government you want.
Yes.
We're just going to stay out of it.
Yes.
You can decide whether or not if you're a dictator, if you're being controlled by a dictator, by your monarchy still, or by a constitutional party. It's all up to you. The choice is yours and yours alone. So a lot of, I think especially like Eastern European powers, they actually, a majority of them, I think, still stuck with a dictatorship to a certain degree, or like a council of dictators. I could be completely wrong in this, just to be clear. But yeah, it was seeing like the map drawn of the war. And what's funny is Italy, that entire purpose of betraying Austria and Germany to get a little bit of land. I don't even think they got the land they wanted. I think they got like a little bit of land, but it wasn't much. Which was funny because, to give you a little insight here, Mussolini was actually a communist. Well, not a communist, he was a socialist.
Yes.
To clarify, people, being a socialist and being a communist is two very different things. They have similar ideals, similar ideals to a certain degree, but they're very different. I think the party that Mussolini was a part of didn't want a war, but Mussolini was like, hey, we get involved in the war, we can get a whole bunch of land. But he got kicked out, and that's when he started a little
thing called fascism.
Yeah, it's a very small thing. You might have heard of it, if you really delve into the history books, you might have heard about it here or there. And that inspired an artist, I believe. I think he was an artist.
Reject from art school.
Right. I think a man called Adolf Hitler, I think was his name.
Yeah,
his name is.
Didn't he like Jews? No, he hated them. That's right.
Okay.
Anyways,
stay tuned for the second episode of the podcast. We haven't thought of a name for it yet. We're probably thinking maybe historical talks with John and Gavin.
We'll think of something catchier.
Yeah, something catchier. I figured, do you go by a handle online? Because I
just.
Anyway, this has been Nerdy John, or John Terry, signing out with my co-host. We all hope that you enjoyed our rambles. And this is probably going to be going on my Nerdy John YouTube channel. Okay. Because to put stuff on Spotify, I think costs a bit of money.
Yeah.
And same with iTunes. And even I don't have access to actual iTunes on our school's iPads. So this is probably going to go on my YouTube channel. Thank you, Gavin,
for
no
problem.
Being a host on this show, so we can talk a little bit more history.
No problem.
I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you stay tuned for the second episode.